So for these types of questions, we've seen them before. State whether each sequence is arithmetic, geometric, or neither. We had them on our last review, and we had them on the last quiz. Arithmetic is when you add to get from one number to the next. Geometric is when you multiply. So you have to be adding the same number each time or multiplying the same number each time. So here we have 36, 28, 20, and 12. So if we see, we're subtracting 8, subtracting 8, and subtracting 8. So that would make this arithmetic. So number 2 is arithmetic. Let's look at number 4. So we can see here we're not multiplying by anything to get from -9 to -7. We are adding 2. Here we're adding 3. So since this is not the same number, this would be neither. Any questions from this section? So number 6, we have to find the common difference, the rule, and the given term of the arithmetic sequence. So it tells us it's arithmetic, so we know we're going to use that formula that is a sub n is equal to a plus n minus 1 times d. So we just need to find what our a is and what our d is. So a is the first term. That'll be -13. Now we need to find what our common difference is. What are we adding to get from one number to the next? So here we are getting smaller, so we're subtracting 30. We're subtracting 30 and subtracting 30. So our common difference is -30. Next, we have our rule, which is our general term. So we have a sub n. We plug in a and d. So we have -30 plus n minus 1 times d. And d is -30. Oops, sorry. A is -13. That would be our first term. -13. And d is -30. So this is our rule. That's it. We don't have to plug in anything for n yet. We do that to find our term. So term, we just plug in what it tells us to for n. So here we have to plug in 20. So a sub 20 is equal to -13 plus n minus 1 times -30. Oops, and we said we're going to plug in 20 for n. And then you just have to make sure you follow your order of operations when solving. So 20 minus 1 is 19. So you have 19 times -30. Plug that into your calculator. So that gives us -570. So -13 minus 570 would be -583. So for this question, our answers would be our common difference, which is d here, our rule, and our term. Any questions? Alright, next one. Number 8. We're doing the same thing. So first let's find our common difference. We see that we are adding 6 and adding 6 and adding 6. So d is equal to 6. Next, let's find our rule. We plug in our first term and our common difference. So a sub n is equal to -25 plus n minus 1 times our common difference, which is 6. So that's our rule. Then we find our term. It asks us to find the 20th term here, so we're going to plug in 20 for n. So a sub 20 is equal to -25 plus 20 minus 1 times 6. So 20 minus 1 is 19, and 19 times 6 is 114. So negative 25 plus 114 would be 89. So here our answers are the common difference, which is 6, our rule, which is this equation here, and our term. Any questions from this section? All right, let's go to do the same thing, but with geometric sequences. So our general formula for geometric sequence is a sub n is equal to a, which is our first term, times r to the power of n minus 1. So we have to find what our common ratio is. What are we multiplying to get from one number to the next? So here we can see we're multiplying negative 4, multiplying negative 4, and multiplying negative 4. So our ratio is negative 4. Next, we want to find our rule. So we have a sub n is equal to our first term, which is 3, times negative 4 to the power of n minus 1. So next we want to find our term. We need to plug in 10 because it tells us to plug in 10. So a sub n is equal to 3 times negative 4 to the power of 10 minus 1. So careful with your order of operations here. We have to do 10 minus 1 first, which is 9, and then negative 4 to the power of 9. So that would be negative 262,144. And then we just multiply this times 3. So it would be negative 786,432. So we have our rule, our common ratio, and the term. All right, 11. Here we can see we're multiplying by negative 2, multiplying by negative 2, multiplying by negative 2. So our common ratio is negative 2. Then our rule is a sub n is equal to our first term, which is 2, negative 2, times our rule, our common ratio, which is negative 2, to the power of n minus 1. So there's our rule. Next, we want to find our term. So we're going to plug in 12. A sub 12 is equal to negative 2 times negative 2 to the power of 12 minus 1. We have to do 12 minus 1 first. So we have negative 2 to the power of 11. So that gives us negative 2,048 times negative 2. So 4,096. So we have our common ratio, our rule, and our term. Alright, next let's look at our word problem down here. So when you were 3, you had 8 action figures, and every year after you added 3 more action figures to your collection. How many action figures did you have in your collection when you were 9 years old? So when we were 3 years old, we had 8 action figures. So we want to find out how many we had when we were 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. We're looking for how many we had when we were 9 years old. Each year, we add 3 more to our collection. So 8 plus 3 would be 11. 11 plus 3 would be 14. 14 plus 3 would be 17. 17 plus 3 is 20. 20 plus 3 is 23. And then 23 plus 3 is 26. So that means we had 26 action figures when we were 9 years old. So you will have a word problem super similar to this one on your test. Alright, next page. We're moving on to circles. So we're still sticking with the right side of the page even though it's odd numbers now. But use the information provided to write the standard form equation of each circle. So our standard form equation of a circle for any circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared, where our center is h comma k. So we use our center to plug in h and k, and then our radius of the circle is r. So we would just take our radius and square it to put it into the formula here. So let's look at 15. Our center is this point right here. So our coordinate point for the center would be 2, 0, because we go to the right 2 and stay on 0. So just be careful that you guys know how to plot a point and you know like what your x and your y are. So we have our center. That means 2 is our h, 0 is our k. So we have x minus 2 squared, because look at how our formula is minus, so it becomes minus 2, even though it was a positive 2. And then we have y minus 0 squared. Whenever it's minus 0, you don't even have to put it, you would just put y squared. And then let's figure out our radius. So radius is the distance from the center of your circle to the edge of the circle. So we can just count here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 spaces from the center to the edge, so our radius is 4. In our equation, it has to be radius squared, so that would be 4 squared, which is 16. So this is our standard form equation of the circle. Do you guys have any questions? All right, 17. First, let's figure out our center. That would be right there. Our point for our center is -2, -1, because we go to the left 2 and down 1. So when we plug that into our formula for our circle, we have x minus -2. So when you have minus a negative number, it becomes plus. So x plus 2 squared plus y, again we have minus a negative number, so y plus 1 squared. Next we want to figure out our radius. So we count how many spaces from the center to the edge of the circle. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. So again our radius is 4. In the equation here, it needs to be our radius squared. So 4 squared would be 16. All right, let's look at 19. So these we're doing the same thing, but just in the opposite direction. It gives us the formula, we have to graph it. So we need to figure out what our center is and our radius. So our center comes from these points here. And remember, we always have to flip the sign. So if it's x minus 1, that would be a positive 1 for our x. And then y doesn't have anything that's being added to it, so it would be 0. So our center is at 1, 0. So we go to the right one, stay on 0. Next, we need to figure out our radius. This is our radius squared. So r squared is equal to 4. We just take the square root of both sides, so our radius would be 2. So we're going to count 2 in every direction. So we go to the right 2, up 2, left 2, down 2. Once we do that, we just connect the dots with a circle. Next page. So again, we want to figure out our center and our radius. So our center comes from these points, and we just flip the signs. So that would be positive 2 and positive 2. Let's plot our center. Go to the right 2 and up 2. And then we need to put our radius. So r squared is equal to 9. So if we take the square root of both sides, r is equal to 3. So our radius is 3. That means we just count 3 in every direction from our center. So we go to the right 3, up 3, left 3, down 3, and connect the dots. Any questions here? Next, we have our factorial questions. So for these types of questions, you can use your calculator, but I need to see your work. So on your test, make sure you show your work. Factorials, so if we see that 7 with the exclamation point, that means it's 7 times every number that comes before it. So this is 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And then we have 2 factorial, which is 2 times 1. Anything that's the same on the top can cancel out with the same thing on the bottom. So 2's cancel out, 1's cancel out. So on the top, we just have 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3. So this is when we can use our calculator. So we get 2,520. So I need to see your work. Show your work. So you just got to write it out. Once you write it out, you can just put it in your calculator. All right, 25. We have 4 factorial over 1 factorial. So 4 factorial is 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And 1 factorial is just 1. So 1 on the top cancels out with 1 on the bottom. So we just have 4 times 3 times 2. 4 times 3 times 2. You can put it in your calculator, or if you can do it in your head, totally fine. 4 times 3 would be 12, times 2 would be 24. So our answer here is 24. So again, I need to see your work. You got to see this written out. So for 23, this one?
Yes.
All right. So 7 factorial is 7 times every number that comes before it. So 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. 2 factorial is 2 times everything that comes before it. So that would be 2 times 1. If anything overlaps on the top and the bottom, you can cancel them out. So it's like go fish. Like if you both have a 2, just cross them out. So now on the top, we're just multiplying 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3. Which from here, you can just put it in your calculator.
Oh, okay. I was doing it wrong. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.